week's presentation. My COVID experience so far. Gallagher, PhD. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed us. By now, we all know of several friends, family, or acquaintances who have had the infection and recovered, but some who have died as well. What determines who survives and who doesn't? In this lecture, Dr. Gallagher will share her personal experience about prevention treatments, protocols for the different stages of the infection, and some of the comorbidities that complicate the disease. The internet has become a great source of information, but also of misinformation. Bea will address what is true and false based on published science. She will also address what makes this new Delta variant more difficult, who is more at risk, and what to do to reduce the risk of infection. Finally, how to build a first aid kit to have at home. Beatriz Gallagher is a certified nutrition specialist and doctor in integrative medicine and clinical nutrition. She received a master's degree in human nutrition from the University of New Haven, a diploma in Chinese medicine, and a PhD in integrative medicine at the Capital University of Integrative Medicine in Washington, D.C. She has been in practice for over 30 years. So please join me in giving a very warm, safely distant welcome to Dr. Gallagher.
Hello? All right. You can hear me? Well, good morning, everybody. This is my 11th lecture here at LCS, and maybe my last one. Maybe. Better?
No.
No?
No, it was better before.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, it's been a wonderful career and experience for me here in Mexico since I moved in 2010. When my husband said, "You're going to Mexico, they're going to kill you, or they're going to kidnap you." I said, "I am Mexican. They will not bother me." So, in this time, it's been a process of getting older as well. You see, I have now my white hair. But also, I think as we get older, we become wiser. Or some things we just don't care anymore. So now we have to deal with this new infection that is really not that new, it's just more popular. And I was thinking, how am I going to explain where we're living? And I thought, we need to prepare for like going to war, going to a battle. So let's say we have a country that is declaring war, and we have to prepare. And you are the general. What would you do? If I was the general, or the person in charge, first I would do some investigation. How good is my enemy? How strong they are? Where are the weapons? How many are they? And then my own evaluation. How good I am, how many people I have, the weapons, resources, and so forth. So I think if we think this way, we have a better chance to be successful. By successful, I mean don't die if you get it. So, following this thought, we have to understand this virus, coronavirus. Everything in nature has good things and bad things, even viruses. So I need to know what I'm dealing with. So I made a few charts to explain, more from my memory. I know the pictures will be very small for you to see in the back, but I will explain. Okay. This is our human cell. The human cell is very complicated once you study it in depth. We know that we have membrane, we have a nucleus in the middle, we have a bunch of organelles, right? And outside, like little antennas, we have receptors. So this is our human cell. There are many shapes of cells, many types of cells. Some live a long time, some die very soon. But basically, human cells have this structure, except for red blood cells that don't have a nucleus anymore. So now I have my virus. A virus has a membrane as well. It has a bunch of little antennas. Inside, it has no organelles. It only has a bunch of RNA. So RNA is an instruction book. And we are exposed to many, many viruses all the time. But that's why we have an immune system. The immune system recognizes the virus. It has a file of pictures and IDs. So when something is not good, it's going to initiate an attack. It's going to provoke inflammation. It's going to stimulate the body to make more immune cells, more soldiers. Then it's going to make antibodies for future use. And some of these antibodies will be hanging around, but others will go into our bone marrow, like long-term storage. So the immune cell is very important. Lymphocytes are created in our bone marrow, and then they go to the thymus right here for college. But it's a very difficult college. It's worse than Ivy League colleges that take 10% of the students. This college called thymus, only 1% of the students graduate. They have to learn chemistry, they have to learn identification, they have to have good memory. So what happens to the 99 that flunked? Anybody knows? They get killed, they're dead. Good thing it happens to us when we go to school. So, coronavirus has a membrane. It's very, very small. That's why it has the ability to sneak in. It has an ID that can trick the cell and let it in. But the thing that is special about this virus is that latches on to the ACE2 receptors. That is what makes it bad. Now, on the other hand, the virus has a membrane that can be susceptible to oxidation. But coronavirus has a spell checker, and it will check mistakes and correct them. So it does mutate, but it doesn't mutate as much as the flu virus. The flu virus, those who get the flu shot, every year is a different vaccine because the scientists go to China, they find what are the most popular viruses of that season, and they create the vaccine based on statistics or probabilities. They think this is the most likely or the least likely. So this information will be important because that will determine what we're going to do if we get sick. Last year, in February, I went to Las Vegas. And I was waiting for my plane to board, and I saw this plane coming from China. And everybody had a face mask. And I thought, how weird. And then a guy wearing a spacesuit is fumigating everything. That's even weirder. And I'm going into that plane? Oops. So I think they knew more than what we knew. So then, came back to Mexico. March, I had my birthday party. And a week later, everything has to be shut down. So we were told 2 weeks. Remember? And then 2 weeks became another 2 weeks. And then a month. And then 2 months. And now it's what, a year and a half? So people started to get sicker and sicker. And in the beginning, doctors were told that they were not allowed to have autopsies because it was too contagious. And then the Italians, a little rebel, that say, screw this. We're going to know why people are dying. So then they started to see that the cause of death was massive inflammation and clots. So then they started to change the protocols to help people. So they started to use cortisone, they started to use more antibiotics, and they have, now I think we know more, but we don't know everything. We still have a lot more to learn. So let's review here. The nucleus is only a library, but there are no books. You cannot go in there and borrow a book, take it home, read it, and then bring it back. You can only make photocopies. So you can only get instructions. So the DNA opens up and is copied, and then we make RNA, which is an instruction book, like a cookbook. That RNA gets shuttled to the ribosomes to produce proteins. And we have thousands of proteins. So, virus is in the air, or we get it somehow. It latches onto this receptor, and it has a special key and gets in. So now it goes in line, like waiting to buy your tortillas, stand in line. And when it's your turn, it says to the ribosome, make this recipe. And the ribosomes are obedient, they don't question anything. They say, okay. So it produces then more viruses, and then those viruses then find a way to get out, go to another cell, and do the same thing. So there is a timeline from the moment you are exposed to when you start to feel symptoms. Many people wait too long. Those who have a terrific good immune system might fight the virus and you don't even know you had it. But if we have the virus, and we don't have symptoms, we can still get other people sick. And this brings me to something very famous, about 40 years ago, which is cell membrane. The cell membrane is like customs and immigration. It determines what goes inside the cell and what doesn't go in. Or also the cells have to export the products. So let's see who may have damage of cell membranes. Well, there are some clues. if you have extra pounds, obesity, if you have cardiovascular disease, any respiratory problem, allergies, dysbiosis. This is my favorite because we talk about poop, right? As a matter of fact, my daughter works in a lab, and they were going to the bathrooms collecting poop because they didn't know how the students were getting COVID. And it was from the bathroom from poop. If you have an autoimmune disease, fibromyalgia, any chronic conditions, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, so all those things are clues that your cell membranes are not as good as you wish they had. The cell membranes depend on what you eat. If you have a lot of fried food, your cell membranes are going to be stiffer. They're not as flexible. So it goes with a balanced diet, right? If you're taking a lot of medication, that also puts a burden on your liver for detox. When we are born, we have two immune systems. One is called Th1 and the other one Th2. Th1 is something we're born with. We get it from our mother, and we inherit this. And Th2 we acquire to what we're exposed to. So kids, because they're younger and have less mileage, their Th1 is more efficient. As we age, our Th1 is not as efficient. And also, we don't feed it right. We think a hot dog is good enough. Our 3 balanced meals. When I moved to Mexico, my husband had to cook for himself. And I asked him, are you eating 3 balanced meals? He said, yeah, I always have breakfast. I said, yeah, what is your breakfast? An ensure with an ounce of whiskey. I said, that's balanced? Yeah, it's really yummy. So, we are preparing for something that may come. This is not an invasion, but this is the risk of getting an infection. So I would do first a test, like a lab test. I'm going to see how is my blood. Do I have anemia? How is my immune system? I usually add to my patients to test vitamin D levels, because people think because we live in a sunny place, you automatically make vitamin D. No, you have to be out in the sun. I have had vitamin D levels as low as 9 in a person. Ideally, it's 80 to 100. So I asked them, do you live under a rock or what? He said, no, I'm afraid that I can get skin cancer. Okay, so take a vitamin D supplement. In a blood test, we can see many clues of deficiencies. For example, low BUN, blood urea nitrogen, it indicates me that this person doesn't have enough protein. The phosphate levels are less than 3.4, not enough protein, and also don't produce enough acid in the stomach to digest your protein. Less than 1.9 levels of magnesium. You're tired. And why are you tired? Most people don't eat enough veggies. Magnesium is in all the things that are green. Cholesterol is high. Why is it high? Well, see your diet, but also could be from other conditions. But high cholesterol is also an indication of something called methylation problems. Not enough B12, B6, and folic acid. When you have an infection and your platelet count goes too low, that's an indication also of folic acid. Many people have high uric acid and they get scared and it hurts and you get gout. But nobody cares when the uric acid is low. Uric acid is an indication, when it's low, of molybdenum, which is a key trace mineral for detox in your liver and for your joints. In Mexico, most labs don't measure CO2 or anion gap, but CO2 can tell us if it is high, you have alkalosis, or if it is low, you have acidosis. If you do get COVID, you need to check your levels because that will tell you if whatever you're doing is working. LDH is an indication of inflammation. C-reactive protein. White will count when it's too high or too low. So in preparation, a good blood test is a good idea. Now, when we started working with people with COVID, you know, we didn't have any guidelines. We didn't know what to do. Many years ago, I had this patient who came for a colonic, and she brought me these two little bottles. She called it MMS. She said, I want you to do a colonic and put this thing in there. I said, hell no. I don't know what's that. She says, oh, there's a good book. You can read about it and learn about it. I said, okay. I'm willing to learn something new. So I did start to use it with her because I said, you sign this paper. If something happens to you, I'm not responsible. You know, better be sure. I was trained in the U.S. and everybody sues people. She was not going to sue me, but I want to make sure. So we started to use this chlorine dioxide. Now many people have confused this with Clorox. Remember Trump? Well, some people were so dumb they drank Clorox. But I have this paper here that I have prepared to show the difference. So in chemistry, everything is simple. So HCl is hydrochloric acid, right? We all have it in the stomach. So it's hydrogen and chloride. If we have salt in here instead of hydrogen, if we have sodium, now we have table salt. So that's what we put in our food. If to this molecule we add 2 oxygens, now the name changes. It's called sodium chloride with a T. If we remove 1 oxygen, now it's called sodium hypochlorite. That is Clorox. That's the stuff we buy in the store. We used to disinfect, and nobody should drink that. So now comes the chemistry. If we mix this sodium chloride with a weak acid, that hydrochloric acid, at 4% concentration, then we lose the sodium part, and we get ClO2, which is chlorine dioxide. Chlorine dioxide is an oxidant, which works quite well to oxidize the membrane of the virus or a bacteria. So how come it doesn't hurt the cell membranes, the human cell membranes? Because all our cells have antioxidant enzymes. We have catalase, we have glutathione, we have superoxidase dismutase. We have a bunch of them. So we started to use that. Then guy in Spain, I believe, he was hired to do MMS to cows. He said, well, how am I going to make a cow drink this? So he was a biophysicist, and he learned how to create this chlorine dioxide, which is a gas, and put it into water. Now you put that in water and you drink it. Now the cows got it. So we started using that. And then I developed kind of a first aid kit for my patients. So one thing I learned was I started to use a lot of medicinal mushrooms, and there's a particular extract of those mushrooms. Together with spirulina, it blocks the entrance of the virus, cannot latch onto the receptor. So the only thing is that thing is quite expensive. But I made it into a homeopathic remedy and it worked great. We know what the immune system likes to eat and what the immune system doesn't like in the picture. Sugar, bad idea. Too much alcohol, bad idea. So if your diet is with more vegetables, you have a better chance that your immune system is well fed. You wouldn't send your soldiers to war with hot dogs and Coke dogs. So the RDAs were created after World War II, I think in Korea War, because they wanted to know that the soldiers were well fed. Because if you have strong soldiers, they will fight better. So then the RDAs have been modified and corrected through the years. But let's understand that RDAs is the minimum daily requirement to prevent deficiency diseases. They are not for optimal health. Those doses are different in all of us. Some people need more, some people need less. In Mexico, I don't have ability to check for intercellular nutrients, but we take basic stuff. There is enormous amount of confusion about what to do, and since COVID started, I have been bombarded with stuff people send me about things that may happen with vaccines or remedies or the conspiracy theories or stuff like that. So recently I got one about this guy who said that he invented mRNA. And I have the fortune to have a very smart daughter. And I sent it to her. I said, check this. So, being a scientist, she's going to research who wrote this, where was it published, what is the grade of that journal, how many people have quoted that article. So, I'm just going to read a couple of things here. First, 3 things to consider, she says. He wishes he was the inventor. As if he was the inventor, he would have gotten a patent. Instead, he just mentioned. Now, when you write something and it's published, it's very important to see how many people have quoted your study. So his study has been quoted 134 times, with very few recently published. In the meantime, my daughter showed up. My paper, that was published in 2002, this paper that he published was in 1996. Her paper was published in 2002, and he has 358 times. So, in the field of science, people are ignoring his paper. The article breaks down several misstatements. It's a long list of corrections. I'm not going to read them. But how do we know what's true and what's not? It's really difficult. You need to have a good science background. You need to have a bunch of people that you trust their opinion to really say, this is good information or this is junk information. So I have a group of friends, all practitioners. So in the beginning, we didn't know what to do, so I asked them, what you do for this, or what you do for that. So we started collecting some ideas. My main background is in nutrition, so I think nutrition is the key to be in the best shape to survive and be successful, both to prevent the infection or be successful and don't die. That's the end point, right? Don't die. So we have a timeline here. So you have exposure. First, the virus starts to reproduce like crazy. So in 2 to 3 days, you will have some symptoms, most likely. If you get exposed today to somebody who has COVID, don't go tomorrow to get tested. It's going to come out negative. Wait 2 to 3 days until you can be now have something to test. So the most common symptoms, headache, fever. We have the coronavirus could be gastric virus. And you have vomit and you have diarrhea. Most likely you don't have fever and you can breathe okay. Some people lose the smell. My nurse got COVID. She's always putting IVs very close to people. And she did get COVID. And the only symptom she had was she couldn't smell. And the only thing she did was MMS. And she was fine in like 5 days, but they sent her home for 2 weeks. That's the rule. But that was her only symptom. The COVID is, because it's so much stress on the immune system, then we start to have some opportunistic infections. Now these are mostly bacteria. So that's where the antibiotics would be a good thing, or something that kills bacteria. So if you have COVID, you need to be tested to see how you're doing. There is a panel specifically for COVID people that includes C-reactive protein. That tells you how much inflammation you have. The D-dimers, the fibrinogen, this is what makes, so the little strings that make the clot, remember, is microclots. And then the CBC and manual differential. In Mexico, that's called 35 elements or 45 elements. But that tells you how's your liver, your kidney, your cholesterol, your blood sugar, your blood, do you have anemia? What are your numbers? If you have a baseline test, then you can compare later on. The antibodies show until 8 to 15 days later. And that depends also on the efficiency of your immune system. Then we have the critical case. Well, the critical case is beyond us, and that was when you go to the hospital. I have, right now, they're coming out, but 2 nephews. My immediate family, nobody got, my sisters, brothers my age and younger. But now the nephews and nieces are the ones getting the COVID now, in their 20s and 30s. So I have 2 right now. One is very athletic, stay home, he had some medication. But the other one is a very tall, very heavy guy with hypertension at 31. So he started to go downhill much faster, and he started to have, the oximeter shows at 82. But now it's a big scare. Oh, that's hospital. But my sister-in-law, she said, hospital is very expensive. They don't have beds now. I think we're going to try to take this thing at home. So they got oxygen. They started immediately, the CDS. I sent a bunch of vitamins. And he had his own room and his own bathroom. 2 days of crisis. Now he's coming out. So for younger people, because they have more energy or more vitality, they can bounce back faster. Okay, a dear friend of mine died recently, and he had COVID, but he didn't die of COVID. He died of mycoplasma pneumonia. At this point, I don't know what they're doing in the hospitals. Patients are totally isolated. It's very hard to get the doctors to tell you what they're doing. It is kind of a scary thing. I was, that year before and the year before that, I had 2 surgeries. So I was in the hospital only 2 days. But being in the hospital is very stressful. They wake you up, and then the diet was very bad. The second time I complained very strongly about the bad diet. See, we just came out of surgery and all you're giving us is sugar, gelatin, juice, and and toast. Yeah. I said, get this out of here. I want a piece of animal, a piece of meat. I want some veggies. So I made such a big fuss that my nephew, his wife had a baby in the same hospital, and now the food was exceptionally good. So it pays to complain. Okay, so since I work mostly with natural remedies, I'm very much inclined to use more natural stuff, herbs, vitamins, supplements. In my program, we were not allowed to learn pharmacy because that was the privilege of MDs. So we call ourselves academic nobodies. We can read blood tests, but we cannot order a blood test. And so looking at what is out there that looks good and legit, a very good patient sent me this link of something, a website called FLCCC. And they have protocols for prevention, for early symptoms, for home care, and if you happen to have to go to the hospital, then print that protocol and give it to your doctors so they do that. So the beginner is called eye mask, and then for medium is called eye mask, and then comes the math plus. The math plus is when you are really sick, and then the last one is the recover. Right now, most of the patients I'm working with are long haulers. They went through infection, but they are not 100% well. So it is like the immune system gets stuck in fighting. We have to retrain and say, look, there's nothing else to kill. Calm down. So there are certain nutrients that are absolutely essential to modulate this exaggeration of the immune system. So in COVID, what kills us is not the virus, is the exaggerated response of the immune system. Extreme inflammation, the clotting, right? And then the red blood cells deform. Now they look like sickle cells. They cannot deliver oxygen. And then if you're all inflamed, you cannot breathe. So some of the things that are very useful to break this vicious cycle of the immune system is niacin. Niacin is vitamin B3, and it's essential also to produce energy. Most of us, we are deficient in many vitamins. I just came back from the States, and there was a webinar, and they gave me a discount if you do all these tests. I said, go ahead, and I had my test. And I thought I was going to pass all with A+, right? No, I couldn't pass with A+. So one of the things that most of us were low in, B vitamins, vitamin C, CoQ10, magnesium. Magnesium is all over the place. It's very important to have magnesium because one of the first conditions that happens with any disease is fatigue. We're tired. So the body needs more nutrients when we're sick. Okay. So the thing about the vaccines, for a long time in the beginning, I did have a lot of questions about, okay, I feel very strong, I'll get the infection, I'll get the immunity, and fine. Well, that would be fine if I'm here. When I have my medicines, I have my toys, and I have help, and I have company. But what if I'm traveling? I'm in airports, I'm in another country. And I think there are more benefits to have a vaccine than not to have it. So I did get it. And I had no symptoms of any headaches or anything like that. And so far, so good. So I'm just going to show you quickly some of the things I used. So this is your first aid kit. I use a lot of ivermectin. You need your oximeter and a thermometer. Everything very easy to have. Okay. The oximeter? Oh, ivermectin. Ivermectin originally is an anti-parasitic medicine, but they have found that this medicine is like birth control pill for the virus. It blocks the enzyme that goes to the ribosomes to make new viruses. I'll pass the box around. This is not the only thing, but this is how we started because that's all we have. This? Oximeter. Put it in your finger and check your oxygen levels. Thermometer, check your temperature. Okay, so this is like basic. I am learning about new products, and I just learned this today from my good friend who's sitting in the back. He has his own lab, and he's producing this. One is like a natural antibiotic, antiviral, and the other one is for energy production. So if we have energy, we can fight back better. I'll pass them around and you can see, because I only have 3 minutes left. I finished reading this during my COVID time. And this is the story, the history of scurvy. Scurvy was during the 1700s, 1800s, because sailors stayed too long in the ocean eating meat, crackers, and rum, right? And bad water. So finally, they started to find some remedies that worked. And finally, an English, Scottish guy, I believe it was, he said that it was limes that made the difference. Well, it was really lemons. And then it comes down to economy, and everything has to be, let's save some money. So some people in the ships switched to lemons instead of limes. And then they discredit this because says, no, that's not true. The thing is that there's a lot more vitamin C in a lemon than a lime. And it took 200 years to correct that. And probably this thing about COVID and infections, now we're moving much faster. But this is a lot of misinformation and things that we tend to believe. But a simple lime a day, or lemon a day, could prevent scurvy. Imagine, here in Mexico, they're very cheap. So the thing with preventing COVID, basic things, well, we hear all the time, the face mask, the washing hands, and so forth, but also your food. This is my spirulina, those who used to go to the market, I used to sell it there. And this is the mycelia extra. These two together, they make a sticky protein and don't allow the virus to go into the cell. Right? So, then there are many tools. This is just some of them. There are lots of things that work. My sister works in the University of Chiapas, and the curanderos in San Cristobal de las Casas made like a recipe book with all the teas and remedies if you have fever, if you have cold, if you can't poop, if you can't sleep. So what I want to express is that there are many choices. That's it.